dark meditations on trauma, family, grief, God, still finds humor. Hello, welcome to the Novel Review. My name is Colton Cox, and today we are going to be kicking off with the inaugural review of the channel. And it's also the first review of the year, so Happy New Year, Happy 2021, everybody. Today we are going to be talking about a novel called Ordesa by Manuel Vilas. Manuel Vilas is a Spanish writer hailing from a city called Barbastro in the northeastern region of Spain. He is best known as a poet, and he has done some prose work and books in the past, but Ordesa, when it first came out in 2017, I think, in Spain, was a bestseller. It was translated into Portuguese and French and made waves around the European market, won a number of awards, finally being translated into English by Andrea Rosenberg and published December of 2020. So for the purposes of this channel, it is a new book. Ordesa is described as an autobiographical novel, which is, I think, a good way of depicting it because it doesn't quite have all the characteristics of memoir, nor does it have all of the characteristics of a straight-up, fictional novel. Instead, it really is a book of meditations. The very first page opens like this. If only human pain could be measured with precise numbers, not vague words. If only there were some way to assess how much we've suffered, to confirm that pain has mass and measure. And that's a pretty good nutshell of what he's doing throughout the book. It's not necessarily, a series of events that we follow from A to B to C, but rather it's him kind of taking these snapshot looks back at his own history, the history of his parents, his grandparents, and aunts and uncles, and measuring up just what those experiences were and what they've done to contribute to who he's become and how he functions as a parent, how he functions as a human being, how he functions as a Spanish citizen. It's interesting because it both looks at these really immediate things to him, so things like his family, his relationships, but it also looks at systems he lives in. He talks a lot about capitalism and economics. He talks a lot about God and raising these big questions of life. And you never really feel like it's academic or over intellectual. In fact, you're kind of always on the ride with him because his prose is just so terse and straightforward, and it's often really ironic. It uses humor to kind of break up the darkness of the topics he's talking about. One thing I had a little bit of trouble with myself was getting into this narrator's head early on because he just sort of drops you directly into the sort of suffering he's feeling on page one, on line one, really. And it takes a little bit of adjusting to balance that with some of the irony that comes out in the book. So the first few pages, if not the first couple of chapters, are a bit uncomfortable as a reader, which I think is intentional. But it makes the reading experience a little bit slower because you feel like you just have to emotionally absorb so much so early on. It doesn't really do the work of trying to, hold your hand and bring you in. It just kind of dumps everything right on you from the start. There's actually a number of motifs that are used throughout the novel. So the color yellow is often mentioned. It is, I think for him, the color of memory, the color of decay, the color of aging. He has this voice that is sort of on his shoulder often throughout the novels, talking to him and helping him kind of make sense of a situation. It's not always a kind voice. Sometimes it's, not exactly helping him take an optimistic outlook. But most of all, he uses photographs. So actual snapshots of his father or his mother or him as a child, and uses that as a way of kind of positioning himself into a particular memory and diving into a topic. All of the chapters are really short. I think the longest that I came across was, maybe 8 or 9 pages at most. In fact, there's like 140 chapters in the book in total. And that kind of speaks to how quickly he goes from topic to topic to experience, trying to grapple and juggle the totality of his life altogether, and all these thoughts that have kind of gone into understanding who he is today. It's never really exhausting though. You never feel like you're getting tired of just how rapidly he's moving through topics. There's a few lines in the book I actually wanted to read. I printed out, maybe 6 or 7 pages of quotes that I'd highlighted from my own reading. But a few that really stuck out to me that I think do a good job of kind of encapsulating elements of the novel. My father became electricity and cloud and bird and song and orange and tangerine and melon and tree and road and soil and water. And I see him whenever I try to see myself. His high laugh tumbling over the world, his desire to turn the world to smoke and ashes. That's how ghosts are. They are forces and forms of the life that precedes ours, which is there, crowned, purified. My father is like a tower full of corpses. I often feel him behind me when I look in the mirror. This is you now, my father says, and then there is deep silence. It's almost like you're reading someone's diary. You are kind of, as this person is unpacking themselves, you are in step with them, in tempo with them, doing that unpacking yourself. You're never presented with some puzzle or enigma that you have to solve. It is just someone who is having gone through a lot of crap in their life, having worked through trauma, having felt the regret of disconnecting from people and wanting to repair connections, is going through the mental gymnastics to kind of make that work presently. It is a very sad book at times. In fact, it's often more sad than it really is lighthearted or funny. But it is, I think, an effective way of jumping into some questions that just don't have obvious answers. It's definitely something worth reading. It's going to make you think quite a bit about your own life, about your own relationships, your own family. In fact, I'm going to show you. This is the novel bookshelf of recommendations. This is what I'll be using to rank the different things that I've read throughout the year in terms of just how much I'd recommend them. If a book makes it onto the shelf, then it's a recommendation. It's something that I think you should read, but just how much of a recommendation it is, I've got 3 categories. The top shelf recommendations are books that you might want to read twice. They're that good. Mid-shelf recommendations are books that I definitely think you should buy, you should spend money on, you should get this on your shelf. Bottom shelf, it's good. You should read it, maybe borrow it from a friend or from a library. But overall, anything on here is definitely worth your time. And Ordesa, being the first book that I'm reviewing this year, is going to be a solid mid-shelf recommendation, something you should definitely be spending your money on, something you should check out. Be prepared for the kind of emotional work you're going to have to do to read this book. You're going to be doing some emotional gymnastics just to kind of get through some of the ideas that he proposes. But that said, just diving into this guy's head, getting to live that experience a little bit with him, getting to unpack his experiences with him, I think is worth the ride. It's worth your time, and it's certainly worth the money to buy the book. That's it. That's all I got today. If you liked my review, please, like and subscribe. If you have read it yourself, please leave a comment. I'd love to talk about the book with you. And I'll see you next time for our next review.